This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Show. Thanks for joining me. The topic of today's show is creating educational video. My special guest is Martin Sketchley.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Sunday Lunch Show, everyone. I'm Graham Stanley, speaking to you live from Mexico City. As I mentioned earlier on today's show, I'll be talking about creating educational video, both for your students, other teachers, and for a wider audience, if that appeals. How do you start? What kinds of video can you or should you create? Where do you host it? What about equipment? I'll be talking about all of this and more with my special guest, Martin Sketchley. Now, Martin Sketchley started his English teaching career over 19 years ago in December 2005 in South Korea. He holds an MA in English language teaching, a CELTA Trinity Young Learner Extension Certificate, as well as a diploma, and he's now working as an assistant professor at a university in South Korea, teaching Korean and international students a range of different credit and non-credit courses. Martin has run ELT Experiences, his own YouTube channel, since May 2012, and this now boasts over 20,000 subscribers. He has produced a range of video content about English language teaching, the CELTA course, as well as online English teaching. I'll be talking to Martin about his experience of producing and sharing educational video and much more after the Teachers Talk Radio News.
Meet 2025 BET Award winner Kialo EDU, the 100% free tool for thoughtful, inclusive classroom discussion. On Kialo, students contribute instantly and simultaneously to create an interactive map of a discussion, deepening their subject knowledge and enhancing their critical thinking skills. Set tasks, track participation, and provide personalized feedback in just a few clicks. And since it's compatible with all your favorite LMS platforms, it slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. Over 1 million educators and students are already using Kialo to make the world a more thoughtful place. Join them today at kialo-edu.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Website covers comments by Ofsted Chief Inspector Sir Martin Oliver as he accused the most vocal critics of the proposed reforms to inspection. He said proposed report cards for schools are not and never were going to bring about the end of grading. In a speech to the Association of School and College Leaders annual conference in Liverpool, Sir Martin said giving parents and families the information they need in a clear and accessible way was a must-have. Head teachers in the audience at the conference laughed when Sir Martin said he did not want them to be doing anything for Ofsted. Last month, Ofsted launched a consultation on its plans to introduce a new report card system for grading schools in England. Under the proposal, schools could be graded across a variety of areas using a colour-coded 5-point scale. The scale would range from causing a concern to exemplary. Education unions have criticised the proposals for being even worse than the current system. Sir Martin said the report cards were never going to sacrifice much needed clarity for parents. He also said that anyone who thought that report cards were going to end assessment was mistaken, and they weren't paying close enough attention to what parents want, politicians promised, and what children deserve. Ofsted has faced increased criticism since the death of head teacher Ruth Perry. The government announced last year that headline Ofsted grades for overall effectiveness would be scrapped. In response, the president of ASCL, a serving head teacher, said the new report card system felt like a kick in the teeth. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson also told the conference that she knew the proposed changes were challenging and that they sparked debate, but that it was an important national conversation. She went on to say that Ofsted were putting out genuine consultations on the changes. Full details, comments and responses from the sector can be found online. The BBC News website features the issue of emotional literacy amongst men and boys. The charity Beyond Equality, which works with young men on tackling issues around violence against women and girls and the topic of masculinity, had been spoken about by them on BBC Radio London. Ben Hurst from the charity says he believes there is a real systemic issue across the UK, with how boys and men have been socialised to move through and experience the world. He said, they manifest in a range of different ways, and lots of ways are wildly inappropriate. He told the BBC Radio London team that the work of Beyond Equality was to have conversations with men and boys before violent or abusive situations arise, and to try and address gender equality through the lens of masculinity, with an approach that asks questions like, what is masculinity? How does that feel? Do we like it? And would we change it if we could? The BBC programme followed the sentencing of Hassan Sentamu, convicted of the murder of a 15-year-old girl in September 2023. Schools Week features an exclusive report on CEO pay and the rises which it says have sparked inflationary spirals in some of the biggest spending trusts. In its annual executive pay investigation, data has shown more than 60 trusts had leaders paid at least £200,000 last year, with 95% of them awarded rises. National Governance Association Deputy CEO Sam Henson said salary benchmarking is in some cases leading to inflationary spirals, and they don't come with an accompanying narrative on how this deals with the massive pressures the sector is under. The article goes on to say that the gap is widening between CEOs and the rest in the highest paying trusts. 19 of the 31 highest paid chief executives saw the gap grow. A full table of CEO pay can be found on the Schools Week website. Top of the table is Harris Federation, with their CEO being England's best paid and the first to cross the £500,000 threshold. Sharon O'Ryan of Pay in Education said there was usually a strong positive linear correlation between CEO pay and pupil numbers, but this is predominantly in the early phases of trust growth. And that it flattens to a maximum salary for the job regardless of size. 22% of the highest earners are women, similar to last year's 23%. But a Confederation of Schools Trust Pay survey found women CEOs earn about £8,600 less than men, although the gap did narrow slightly. Full details of all the facts and figures, including some details of falling salaries, can be found on the Schools Week website. This has been Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
So welcome back, everyone. I'm here with Martin Sketchley. Martin, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you for agreeing to speak to me. It's great to finally do this.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been looking forward to this, and yeah, thanks for arranging this.
Excellent. So, Martin, as I usually do, I'd love to explore a little bit more about how you became involved in education. And I do know that you've had a particularly interesting career as an educator, which I would love to hear more about. So, what was it that made you want to become involved as a teacher, or did you start somewhere else?
I suppose for me, before I became a teacher, I was in the Air Force. I was working in the military, and after about 3 years, I ended up going to university for another 3 years and studied an undergraduate degree in international business. And I graduated, and I couldn't find a job. I had a small family then, and I reapplied to join the Air Force, but they had other ideas, and they didn't want to see me. So I ended up walking out of the careers office, and I came back home, spoke to my wife, and my wife being Korean, I said, well, I've been looking for a job for 6 months. So why don't we move to South Korea? I can get to know a bit more about where you're from, your culture, your background, where you're brought up. And so in 2005, around December 2005, I moved to South Korea. And the only thing that I could do when I moved to Korea was English teaching. And I worked at a private language institute, teaching at, Korean kids, after school, from the ages of, I guess, about 6 years old to about 16 years of age. And after a year, I really enjoyed it. I kind of found the passion and the interest. It was fascinating. And I decided, well, to take it up a gear. And I did the CELTA course at the British Council in Seoul, Gwanghwamun Center. And I was in Korea for 3 years, came back to the UK, did an MA, worked for a private language institute in the UK, then ended up at a university teaching pre-sessional courses and intensive English courses. I left in, 2023, and I returned back to South Korea, working at a university here in South Korea.
Oh, so you're in Korea at the moment?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I returned back in August 2023, and my son had reached the age where he's at university now. So we thought, well, post-COVID, we realized that life can be quite fragile, and we decided, let's go back to South Korea. And Korea's always had a special place in my heart, with my wife being from this part of the world, as well as having 3 years experience living and working here in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. And I'm back here working at a university, teaching a variety of different courses.
Fabulous. And I think that you have also, along the way, had quite a lot of experience with video, with audio, with broadcasting. Is that right? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I suppose I first dabbled in, video content creation during my studies of MA program, a MA in English language teaching. And I decided to do a diploma in advanced practical teaching. And I ended up recording one of my lessons, which was based on Dogmare ELT, Teaching Unplugged. And I realized there wasn't much in the way of content available, videos or testimonials about this philosophy of teaching. And I decided, well, I've read quite a bit about it. I'm going to put it into practice. So why not document it? I got the university to get a video on a tripod at the corner of the classroom to record. And I ended up editing the video on Windows Movie Maker very quickly. I compiled it and condensed it from a hour and a half lesson down to maybe a 12-minute video, just to share the sort of things and the experiences I had teaching this approach, this philosophy of teaching. And I initially it was for me to document and reflect on my own teaching, and I decided to share it and put it up on YouTube without any intentions. It was just there. I think it was in 2011 or so, really before YouTube kind of became the most popular platform as it is now for video and content viewing. And I returned back to the channel and I realized, it's kind of picked up a bit, and it's getting quite a few views. So that was the first time I really dabbled in video making, I suppose.
Wow, amazing. And what did you learn from videoing yourself and watching yourself teach? Because I know it's something that I did, I was persuaded to do when I worked in Barcelona. And because I had a particularly challenging class of young learners, and I set up a video camera at the back of the room. This was many years ago, and videoed it. The camera caused a massive disruption with the class, and I had the most difficult time trying to control the kids. They also did all sorts of things in the classroom that was all caught on camera, but I did see myself teach under very difficult circumstances, and the resulting video was used in a CPD session, so a development session that my line manager facilitated, and I got feedback from other teachers about some of the things that perhaps I could have done to prevent what happened, prevent things from happening, etc. And it's probably, I think of it as a before and after to my experience as a young learner teacher. Actually, I gained so much from watching myself teach. It's a very difficult thing to do, though, isn't it?
It is. It's you're always self-conscious, and I suppose for me, and for other people, it's always awkward listening to yourself speak. So if you record yourself and you listen to how you speak and the sort of habits that you have, or the small tics that you have, you become a little self-conscious in that way. But if you can push through that, you can start to learn a little bit more in terms of the productive elements of teaching, a bit like what you were saying. And I think these days the cameras are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and they're more discreet than what they were maybe 12, 14 years ago, where it was quite a large setup with a big tripod in the corner of a classroom, which can have its own issues, of course, and it's more visible. Whereas maybe a small discrete gimbal or tripod, which can hold your smartphone these days, can just sit in the corner of the room, just record what you're doing, and you can just hit record and then just take it away. And I suppose obviously you need to get permission with those that you're recording, which I always try to do. But I'm kind of sidetracked. But I'm sorry if you need to probably rein me in if I'm going on a tangent.
No, this is all really interesting. So Martin, it's sufficient if a teacher wanted to video themselves in a teaching in the classroom, apart from getting all the permissions in place, is always good, especially and very necessary if the teacher is going to do anything with the resulting video and it features students, of course. But it's interesting you say that you think that now a smartphone camera would be good enough to capture that. Is that right?
Yes, I believe so. The technology is around now where, filming yourself, whether it's in a classroom environment or in an outdoor environment, and even if you're teaching remotely online, the technology is there that makes documenting lessons, recording lessons, whatever purpose is, more now than what it used to be 12, 13 years ago.
Yeah. What about sound? Because sound can be problematic, can't it? Particularly using a microphone on a smartphone to try and capture the kind of multiple voices that may well be in a classroom.
Yes. Well, if I refer back to maybe some of the initial training like books for those teachers that want to become an English language teacher, there's usually like a DVD at the back of the book, and they have quite a professional setup when you look into teachers that are delivering a certain element of teaching and that side of things, and their setup. But when I viewed their DVD, is that a microphone has been placed on individual classroom tables in front of the students, and then the teachers all lavied up with his lavvy mic or a wireless mic, which is connected to maybe a camera. But in terms of a smartphone and capturing the audio from a smartphone, if you place the smartphone at a distance, it might have difficulty picking up the utterances coming in from the like at the front of the classroom, particularly for the students. But there are ways around it where you can get maybe a wireless mic which is connected to the teacher, or you could get a couple of wireless mics which are kind of small these days, about the size of maybe a 50p piece or something like that, and they can all be wirelessly connected to the smartphone, and you can just place them discreetly on the classroom tables now, and as well as connected to yourself. So there are workarounds in terms of capturing suitable audio.
Yes, excellent. That idea of actually having a wireless mic and having it sort of connected to with the teacher holding it maybe is a good idea, especially if what you're trying to do is you're capturing the video and audio to kind of observe yourself yourself teaching. Then that's probably the best idea, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it depends on what the main focus is. If you're going to be recording your classroom, is the focus on what the students are producing? Are you wanting to document what they want to produce, and are you wanting to analyze what their utterances are or any errors that you want to review? Or is there an element where the focus is on the teacher, and is it instructions? Is it for you to review how you give instructions to students, or feedback to students, or how you interact? And then if it's the latter, then I don't think the audio is going to be that necessary where you have to capture the students. But if it's the emphasis is on the teacher and how the teacher's interacting with the students, then the audio, the capturing of the utterances from the teachers, obviously more important in that regard, I suppose.
Great. And what kind of video have you done since that first time when you produced the 12-minute video of your Teaching Unplugged class? What have you done since then?
Well, my channel lay dormant for a short while, and then I was asked to give a teacher training, or like a training workshop on how to teach young learners. And it was about an hour and a half or so. And I requested for this workshop to be recorded. I set up all the slides in advance. And the association, Sussex Director of Studies Association, set up the camera right at the back of the room. They had a wireless microphone connected to me, which was great. And it was able to maybe capture some of the audio from the audience at the front. But that was my next video that I ended up recording. And I think it took me about a week to edit. And that video itself, how to teach young learners or steps to teach young learners in a summer intensive program, that kind of gained a bit more momentum and interest as well. So that's one element, I suppose, that I've captured, first being the Dogma ELT lesson, and then the second being this teacher training workshop. And then after then, I decided, wow, okay, so there's some interest in workshops or giving workshops. And then I kind of went with that and decided, okay, I'm going to give some in-house training sessions to teachers, but then I'll try and record it and edit it and upload. And I kind of found some space, I guess, on what was working and what wasn't within a YouTube environment.
And it was always YouTube that you were attracted to set up. You mentioned you have a channel. What was it about deciding to set up a YouTube channel and share your videos there that appealed to you? And what kind of audience were you looking for?
Well, initially, like I said, I wasn't really looking for a particular audience. It was for me to just document how I was doing in terms of my MA Advanced Practical Teaching, and uploading that into the cloud. But then once I started gaining momentum, I realized, well, actually there is an audience of English teachers who are curious about what can I do with a class, or what are the steps to improve as a teacher, or are you a new teacher and how could you find a new job, or what's the steps on the CELTA course, which was another sort of direction I decided to go towards, and it was like, what's the CELTA course, and how can you become an English language teacher, how can you get a job abroad, and for me, I kind of found a group of people that were passionate themselves. And I've met a number of other language teachers on YouTube. And there's something about that space where you can interact with individuals who are interested. They can ask you questions in the comments and you can reply, or you can pin comments, or you can get inspiration for another video. So I find it quite an interactive environment, whereas you get the video up, but then you've got the comments and the interactions going on just below the video as well.
Fantastic. So did you move away then from recording yourself doing live workshops and teaching classes to doing videos that were more scripted, for example, or more planned?
Yes, I did actually. It was more planned, and I moved away from the teaching workshops to the CELTA course, and the CELTA course videos were quite scripted and quite organized, and I spent a lot of time planning those videos and just putting them out there, and it started gaining a bit more interest and traction. And then I guess in 2020, as with everybody, COVID hit, and there was a big move towards online teaching. So what is online teaching? How can I go about it And that's where my videos started moving towards. And since 2020, that the majority of, or most of my content is about online English teaching.
Yes. Did you see also that there was a kind of increase in interest in teachers trying to use YouTube to help train other teachers or to actually reach students in that way as well during the pandemic?
Yes, I think so. I think there was a realization, and I've got to go back a little bit. I was invited to go for teacher training and give some workshops on teaching, and it was at a university in Europe. And I posed the question, I think it was in 2018 or 2017, and I posed the question like, why isn't online English teaching included in initial teacher training like the CELTA course or the equivalent? And I you know, some of the more regarded trainers there said, well, it's not real teaching. And I kind of took that, and obviously I remember that because it stuck with me. And then the pandemic hit, and there was a mad rush with everybody to try and fill that gap. Like, I can't go into the classroom. What's the other way? Well, it's online teaching, and how can we make it more professional? Well, it needs to be regarded. So it kind of went back on itself. And so now I think online English teaching is much more regarded than it was in the mid 2010s, 2015s or so. And I think there is a push for teachers to develop the skill set necessary to make videos so that they can connect with potential students, or to create videos for students to engage with after their online lessons, or for teachers to create videos to present elements of grammar for students to engage with asynchronously. It's a bit of a mouthful, but so it's certainly gained interest and recognition now. And there is an expectation for teachers to have the necessary skills to create video content, whether they're teaching in class or face to face, or a bit of both, online, hybrid. So yes, I think there is that element.
And I suppose with things like methodological approaches like the flipped classroom, which for those listeners who don't know, is basically taking something before a class to prepare students for the actual class. So it's like reversing the idea of after a class, you give students homework, you give the students something like a video or something to read beforehand. That's probably a good use of video, isn't it? So a teacher could actually give the students a presentation through a short video sequence that they can watch before they come to class.
I totally agree. I think flipping the classroom, getting the students to complete a variety of tasks before they come and join live online, I think there's great benefit for that. And the listening activities they could do outside of class, the reading they could do outside of the online class, I mean, and the presentation or the introduction of a particular grammar point which the focus is on could be recorded quite quickly. There's a lot of screen capturing software now, and all you need to do is to hook up a microphone. It doesn't need to be too extravagant or too advanced. So the technology is there. It's just building up the confidence and the skills necessary to create it, I guess.
Yes. And So for any teachers that are listening and are thinking, I would like to do that, I'd like to get started and maybe have my own YouTube channel, perhaps just for the students, what would you recommend? How would you recommend they get started, and what steps do they need to follow?
Well, I would recommend, if it's going to be for just students for the teacher, then the teacher will need to set up a YouTube channel. And to go and set up a YouTube channel, you need to have a Google email account, which can be set up quite quickly. I would recommend maybe teachers setting up a private email, like a separate email, rather than their main primary email if they've already got Gmail. So, Mark English Teacher or David English Teacher at gmail.com or something like that. And then they can create the YouTube channel through that email address. So there's that clear distinction between, okay, that's my private email and that's my English teaching email for video content. And I think the next step, once you've created your YouTube channel, is to decide, what am I going to produce? Is it going to be just screen recordings and then just an explanation of the grammar points? Or am I going to record myself, presenting the grammar? And you don't need to have quite a fancy setup these days. You know, the latest smartphones have video recording capabilities. And there's also video editing capabilities on smartphone devices as well. So you could do everything with your smartphone. Let's take the example of the iPhone, for example. It has iMovie installed, which is a video editing software, and it's very good. It's very good software. It's something that I moved to, and I'm very happy, I'm very happy with iMovie if you're starting out, but you don't need a lot, I guess, which is what I'm saying. You just keep it simple.
Yes, and you can always build upon it later, can't you? Start with the basics, a way of recording, a microphone, an editing software, and then you can always experiment and move on to something a bit more sophisticated later if you feel it's for you.
Absolutely. When I first started, I just had a camera in the corner of the room. There wasn't anything fancy, and yes, you can start to invest in it if you want to become more proficient, or you're a bit more dedicated to the craft of creating videos. So yes, you can go for external microphones, you can get lighting, and you can invest an awful lot. And but yeah, just start with what you have and then see how you get on.
Meet 2025 BET Award winner Kialo EDU, the 100% free tool for thoughtful, inclusive classroom discussion. On Kialo, students contribute instantly and simultaneously to create an interactive map of a discussion, deepening their subject knowledge and enhancing their critical thinking skills. Set tasks, track participation, and provide personalized feedback in just a few clicks. And since it's compatible with all your favorite LMS platforms, it slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. Over 1 million educators and students are already using Kialo to make the world a more thoughtful place. Join them today at kialo-edu.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Martin, you are doing this on YouTube, you have a channel, you're suggesting that's what teachers should use, but there are other platforms available on the platforms that are similar to YouTube, but also things like Instagram and TikTok have become popular now. What do you think about those as platforms for teachers to use?
I think it's good. You can always discover other teachers using Instagram, for example, or Facebook and other platforms. And I think it depends on what sort of content you want to try and produce. So, for example, Instagram works with short form content. There's sort of reels, 1 minute reels. And if you're interested in making reels, this short form content, then it's got to grab your attention immediately. And it takes a certain person to create that video. You've got to plan it out. You've got to think about, what's going to capture the interest of the viewer. But for me, I don't have that ability to create short form, snappy content. And I think longer form content has some sort of, there's a recognition of like, okay, there's a dedicated amount of time that this person has spent creating the video, editing the video. It's 12 minutes long. There's obviously something quite important he or she is sharing. Then rather than maybe a 30-second reel where it's like, okay, that's done. Next reel. Okay, next one. But I'm not disregarding it. Certain teachers have made very successful content on Instagram, but it depends on who that, if you're going to make content, it depends on how you feel. Are you more comfortable with longer form content, or or are you part of that group where you feel like, yes, I can make quite snappy, short, interesting videos for potential students and teachers and the like.
Excellent. So how long usually are your videos?
That's a good one. Now, I've dabbled with live streams, and that I tend to try and keep to an hour. So the live streams are usually unedited, trying to organize a message or something I want to share. Disregarding the longer live streams, most of my videos which have been edited, recorded, planned out and shot and uploaded are around between, I guess, 9 to 15 minutes in length.
Is that something you came to organically, that kind of length of video? Or is it something you have decided that is the best length of video for your content because of some other reason?
I think personally it depends on the video you want to try and create. Say, for example, you could pick up a title and you could plan a video on the top 10 ways to make a podcast or something like that for English teachers. It's going to take a bit of time for you to come up with the ideas and to, I get a notepad and, I'm old fashioned. I like to write down tip number 1 and then boom. And what's the message I want to share? Tip number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 10. That's going to take quite a bit of time to put that all together. And then, you're going to look around 12 minutes. If you're going to spend a minute and a half on each point, and then maybe an introduction and a conclusion at the end of the video, that's going to be around 12 to 14 minutes. Whereas maybe if you're going to be sharing how I dealt with a difficult class, then that's going to be maybe a shorter topic, I guess, maybe 5-6 minutes. So it kind of depends on what you want to try and produce or the content you want to create, which kind of dictates how long that video is going to be.
Is it possible also to look at YouTube to see how much time people are spending watching the videos and decide on looking at those analytics, what is the best time for a video, because you can kind of see how long someone actually stays with your video. And is that worth doing? I
think it's worthwhile when you first start out, particularly when I always say to individuals or teachers who want to try and start off with YouTube is maybe create 10 videos, just create 10 videos on a particular topic you're passionate about. It doesn't have to be about teaching. It could be about whatever kind of tickles your fancy, any hobbies or interests that you have. As long as you get those 10 videos and you upload them to YouTube, and then you can start to make them public, then you'll start to get an idea. And that's when you can look at the analytics, and you can see, how long someone's engaged with the video before they clicked off, or, what sort of interests, peaks were there during the video, where a lot of interest was engaged with that particular video. And even to the extent of, if someone's watching your video up to the end, are they clicking on to the next video? So there's certain things that you can look at, and you can dive quite heavily into the analytics of YouTube. But for me nowadays, I tend to take a bit of a macro view. When you go onto the studio site of YouTube, you get an idea of how many subscribers did you gain, and how many hours were watched within those 28 days, and how to the point of if you get monetized, how much you earn in those 28 days as well.
Right. And we're kind of moving away from the idea of a teacher recording and producing videos for their own students to a teacher who may want to produce something for a wider audience. Now, are there any other considerations if the teacher has decided, I think I've got something to say that would be of interest to other teachers or other language learners, or etc.? How would they approach YouTube rather than a teacher, as you said before, setting up a channel for their students and doing it that way? Are there any kind of different considerations that someone who has an ambition to reach a wider audience should take into account?
Like I said, just before, if someone wants to produce content for a wider audience, it's quite a long journey. It's quite a long step, and you could burn out, or you could lose interest quite quickly if you're not producing content you're passionate about. So if you want to share teaching, English language teaching, to a wider audience, then, and you're that interested in sharing and documenting your experiences, then by all means go for it. However, if there's something that you're more interested in outside of teaching, then go for that, and everything will follow on, and you'll find making videos a lot easier. You'll find creating the content easier, the editing, everything works in your favor once you've discovered that passion, that interest you want to share.
Yes, that's very good advice. What about frequency of content? So we've talked about the length of the videos, but if someone is interested in gaining an audience, a wider audience, as we talked about, they've got some good ideas for videos, they think that will be of interest. How frequent should they produce and release the videos?
Yes, well, I would recommend you can set your own deadlines in terms of how often. If you're starting out, maybe one video every fortnight might be good. Particularly when you're starting to learn the skills necessary on how do I make a video. Okay, I need to record it, I need to script it, I need to edit it, I need to upload it, I need to make the thumbnail. So there's a lot to learn initially in terms of that. So I would recommend maybe one video every fortnight, but you can even go for one video a month if you wish. And you can reevaluate it, of course. There's nothing stopping you from producing more content, so one video a week. So if you're new, or if you're interested in doing this, then obviously the topic, whatever you're passionate about, kind of follows in, and then you create the video. And if it's a weekly video, then that works. You just need to schedule around, okay, I'm going to be working between these hours, and then I need to do the filming afterwards or before I go to work. I need to maybe do the editing during the week and then release it the week after, or something like that. So there's certainly things to consider when it comes down to producing the content and setting up a sort of a schedule of uploads. And as I mentioned before, if you can record a batch of 10 videos, then you will have a bank of 10 videos which you could slowly release once every fortnight or so. And so that would be, 10 videos, 10 pieces of content to share almost immediately before you even announce this is my new channel. Make sure you have the videos there ready to go, and then you can release them at a particular day, on a particular day, at a particular time.
Excellent. Martin, what about finding an audience? If you have your ideas for your videos, you've recorded your 10 videos, you've set up your YouTube channel, you release the first video, and then you don't have anyone watching the videos. What is it like a teacher can do if they want to try and build an audience? How would they get started?
Well, these days you could share the video on Facebook groups, or you could share it on social media like X, formerly Twitter now. I always find it difficult to call it X, but there we are. Or other, or even Instagram, and link in maybe short clips of your video from YouTube into Instagram, and then link your YouTube account in Instagram to that.
Right. And I suppose it's also a question of time. Generally, people will share it with other people as well, won't they? If it's content that they find interesting and useful, then teachers in particular, for example, are likely to share it with colleagues, say, oh, look at this video. That kind of thing word of mouth will help as well, won't it?
Absolutely. And, YouTube is, let's not forget, YouTube itself is probably one of the biggest search engines around. Most people think Google is the search engine, but actually YouTube is a search engine as well. Like, you could type in how to teach English to elementary students, and it will give you some good videos there. So I guess one advice I would say for those that are interested in creating videos, think about what potential viewer is searching for. If you're looking for a particular audience who's new to teaching English as a foreign language, what would they be asking themselves? And, when you first started teaching English as a foreign language, what sort of questions were you asking yourself? And could you make a video to answer those questions for potential viewers? Because it's a wonderful search engine, and it kind of really helps visualize and trying to find that target audience, I guess.
Yes, that's a very good point. It's definitely a good place to go to look for information, how-to videos or tips and stuff. And I'm sure, as you said, a lot of people go there directly rather than using other search engines. Martin, how do you feel about this idea of the influencer? There are ELT influencers now that are on TikTok and Instagram, on YouTube. There are people who have gained very large audiences of learners or of teachers or other people doing what they're doing. How do you feel about that? Is that something you think is something that will kind of rise and fall, will go away, or is this now the world we live in and you will see more of it? What do you think?
It's a good question. And I suppose, when I was at school, 16 or so, and they asked me to fill in a sort of form of what do you want to do when you grow up? YouTube wasn't an option. And, it was like, okay, you can work in an office, you can work on the typewriters or something like that, It's like, well, the world's evolved, it's changed, it's continuing to evolve. And I think influencers, they're there. You've got Instagram influencers, YouTube influencers, very prominent English language teachers or educators on YouTube and Instagram and various other platforms, which is great. They obviously have a large following. They obviously share content which connects with whether it's students or other educators. And I think it will remain. It will, because people naturally like to connect. We're social animals, and it's a tool to connect. So for teachers, they want to try and break away from just their staff room. And I guess when I moved back to the UK in 2009, I was introduced to Twitter, now X, and it was a great way to connect with other educators and English language teachers, and I connected with you on that platform. And YouTube's just another incarnation of how do I connect with other educators, or how can I connect with potential students?
Yes, definitely. And I think video is certainly the most immediate medium, isn't it, to find out something, to understand. We're watching a lot more online video. In fact, I've also heard that channels such as YouTube are becoming more important and have bigger audiences, especially with younger people, than things like television these days.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. That there's obviously, terrestrial TV is starting to become more and more redundant, and people are connecting with streaming platforms, YouTube and various other forms of content, online content. It's just the way technology has evolved, and I think it's not going to go anywhere. I think it's gaining more and more respect. And I guess I go back to the analogy of when I spoke to fellow trainers about why wasn't online English teaching being taken that seriously or included in training sessions, initial teacher training sessions. Well, if you don't continue to evolve and develop your skills, and like in the classroom, then you're going to be left behind. And it's just one thing to consider doing if you're interested, and you don't know what may result from you producing content. You may find that it's really interesting. You'll learn new skills, of course. Before I even started on YouTube, I didn't know how to make a video, how to edit it, how to script it, or any of these things. And I do now. I know how to record the audio and sync the audio with my camera, and I know how to edit videos, and I know all these skills that I can draw upon. So if I'm needed to do something like that, then I wouldn't feel so apprehensive. A bit like online teaching. I dived straight into online teaching in around 2015 or 2016, well beyond, before the pandemic. And I was curious, and just feed that curiosity and pursue whatever you wish to do, and you won't be left behind, I guess.
Yes, very good advice. And what about artificial intelligence? AI is flooding our consciousness, and our attention is every day now being attacked by new generative AI programs and ways of doing it. And it's started to become feasible to produce video with AI. Have you looked into that? Do you think it's something that's going to be important in the future?
AI is good if you connect with it ethically or appropriately, but I don't think it will replace the human element, I guess. Yes, there's AI generated software which can pull out clips and edit it very quickly, and you're there to share it. It's great, but there's a certain level of satisfaction I get when I spend quite a bit of time working on a video, editing the video, sharing it, whether I get views or not. I'm not interested, and it may flop, but I feel a greater sense of accomplishment having gone through the process of recording and editing and sharing than having that replaced by a machine. It just seems a little sterile and a bit too predictable, I suppose, because they're just working on what it's been fed. The message I may want to share might be lost if I give it to a machine to cut it and edit it. So I think AI's good. There's certain positives, but there's also certain cautions we need to take. We need to be quite cautious and decide how are we going to connect with AI. How is it going to help me? Is it going to be an aid to produce the video? Is it going to give me some ideas of what I could produce? Or is it going to replace the whole production process, which, I don't think it would.
No, the only AI videos that I've seen at the moment, I don't know about you, seem to be sort of just curious, strange, surreal type of clips featuring Gordon Ramsay cooking all sorts of weird things, for example, or other things like that. I don't think I've seen anything that would certainly replace any instructional videos, for example.
I think from that there's some what can it produce, what can it make? You give it an image and it can create a video. That's fair enough, but what's the point? I guess with my teacher's hat on, I go through an activity and I go, well, what's the point of doing the activity? Why am I doing it? What's the benefit for the students? And I suppose you got to question that when it comes down to AI generated content. What's the point? What is it trying to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that will change in the same way that AI has changed for large language generators, for image generators, and you can start getting a lot more kind of, once it starts becoming possible to get exactly what you want from it and what you put in as a description, then perhaps it will be a different kettle of fish, shall we say.
I suppose so. I have seen some channels produce video content or talking head style of videos where they've overlaid maybe an AI generated image or video to complement whatever the message is being shared. So there are potentials, but it's not really replacing the whole video creation. It's just supplementing what we have now as a tool.
Yes. Okay, so wrapping things up, Martin, I want to thank you very much for your time and for sharing your expertise and knowledge with everyone. I'm sure some of the teachers out there listening will be rushing to start up their own YouTube channels, or at least start filming their teaching and thinking about how they can create video to use with their students, which I'm sure is going to be really useful for a lot of people. But is there anything that we haven't talked about yet related to video, or anything else that you're interested in that perhaps you'd like to talk about before we end?
I suppose when it comes down to teaching itself, it's quite a broad subject, particularly English language teaching. And, there's a possibility where you can share certain elements of teaching or your experiences, or if you're living abroad as well, you can share the culture that you're living in. And some of the fellow teachers that I follow on YouTube, mainly produce content to share with their family back home, of like, this is what I'm eating, or this is, this is my job, or this is what I'm doing. So there's certainly a large opportunity for those that want to try and pursue video content creation. And there's certain free training available, and as I mentioned before, YouTube is a great search engine. All you have to do is how do I create a video using my iPhone or my Samsung phone or something like that, and it will have a variety of different videos available for you to pursue that. So definitely use the capabilities on YouTube to help give you that knowledge, that skill set.
So a good idea is to experiment, to look at what you have available on your phone, for example, and try playing with different ways of filming and see if that lends itself to any ideas for making videos for students or for the teachers.
Yeah, experiment, try things out. If I'm going to be completely honest, your first video is not going to be great, but maybe your fifth video, your 10th video is going to be much better than your first video. You would have learned a lot through the process, and you're going to make those mistakes, and but enjoy the process. Don't beat yourself up over the fact that, oh my God, that first video was terrible and I didn't get any views, but just keep going and pursue that video creation content, because someone would like it. Whether it's your mum and dad abroad or back in their home country, it's fine.
Yes, no, very good advice. Martin, thank you so much for your time and for being so generous with your knowledge and information and advice for teachers. I'm sure it's going to really inspire a lot of people to start. I think I'm going to start looking into video, definitely. So I've been meaning to. I've dabbled a few times with a couple of videos in the past and really enjoyed it, but never really did it consistently. And I think it would be quite interesting to play with. So I think you've definitely got one person you've inspired to go ahead and start a YouTube channel and create videos. At least I'm saying it publicly now. Whether or not it actually happens is another matter. It's a question of time, of course.
Yes. Well, I look forward to the video that you produce, and keep me posted. I'll definitely keep an eye and see how you develop. And thank you for having me. It's been great, Graham.
Thanks, Mon.
Meet 2025 BET Award winner Kialo EDU, the 100% free tool for thoughtful, inclusive classroom discussion. On Kialo, students contribute instantly and simultaneously to create an interactive map of a discussion, deepening their subject knowledge and enhancing their critical thinking skills. Set tasks, track participation, and provide personalized feedback in just a few clicks. And since it's compatible with all your favorite LMS platforms, it slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. Over 1 million educators and students are already using Kialo to make the world a more thoughtful place. Join them today at kialo-edu.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
So, following on from my interview with Martin, I'd like to take a broad look at using video for English language teaching. As I'm sure you agree, after listening to my discussion with Martin, video can be a powerful tool to use in the English language classroom. And we talked about creating video, but then there's the other aspect of video, using video recordings in class. And this offers a wide range of benefits that can enhance language learning. And here are some key ways that video can be used effectively. The first is developing listening skills. So exposure to authentic language is interesting. Videos can provide real life language in context. helping students hear different accents, intonation patterns, and speech speeds. And listening for gist and detail is interesting too. Videos can be used for comprehension activities such as identifying main ideas, key details, or specific vocabulary. If you make use of subtitles and transcripts, they can support understanding because they help link spoken language to written text. You can also use video to improve speaking skills. So an interesting idea is to involve students in role play and dialogue practice. You can choose a scene from a film or a TV show or a video clip and show it to the students with subtitles, for example, or not. And you can then ask them to recreate it in pairs or small groups to help them practice pronunciation, intonation, and fluency. You can also use these scenes for debates and discussions or group tasks, so you can use them as discussion prompts. Another aspect of video, using video in the classroom, it can be used to enhance vocabulary and grammar. So videos provide very rich visual context that can reinforce new words and structures. If you're looking to study or help students learn a particular set of vocabulary words or around a particular topic, for example, then you can find a particular video clip that can help them with that. And the students can observe how language is naturally used in different situations, particularly if it's not a scripted video clip, but if it's something from an interview or something that is happening in a situation, for example, at an airport or a restaurant, etc. Video can also be used to support writing skills. You can use short films or scenes, clips, etc. to inspire storytelling, script writing. Adverts are a good way of doing this as well, or writing alternative endings for the clip. So you can start by showing a beginning of a scene and then ask them to continue what they think happens next, for example. You can also have them write video summaries and reviews. Students can practice their writing by writing a summary or review or critical analysis of a particular video clip that you've shown them. Videos can also be used for cultural awareness. So they can expose students to customs, traditions, and social norms from different parts of the world. And videos showing everyday life in different countries or cultures can provide opportunities for cultural comparison and discussion. Then you have pronunciation practice. So students can mimic dialogue from videos to practice pronunciation, rhythm, and stress. They can also highlight features like connected speech or sentence stress. Then building critical thinking skills is another way of using video. The videos can prompt students to analyze themes, messages, or characters, encouraging deeper reflection. You can also use videos to stimulate debates or social issues for problem solving, for example, that can foster critical thinking. Videos, of course, combine audiovisual and text elements, which make them particularly effective for multimodal input. So it's a good way of being able to show language in practice and things you can focus upon outside of the actual speech that people are using in the videos is body language, for example. Now, when students create their own content, such as interviews, role plays, or presentations, you can use those videos with other students, other classes, for example, and show that as a stimulus as well. For pre-lesson preparation, and I spoke a little bit about this in my conversation with Martin, you can follow the flipped learning approach and assign video content before class, and that can allow students to engage with language input at their own pace, and it frees up class time for practice and discussion. So particularly if a video clip that you want to focus upon with the students is a bit longer than you would normally use in class, well, if you give it to them to look at before class, then that will save time. Now, when it comes to best practices for using video in the classroom with students, there are some tips that are suggested that you follow. The first is keeping it short. If you choose brief focus clips then that will maintain engagement. It's also not about students sitting and watching video. It's about using video as a stimulus for them to practice language or learn something, for example. You can pre-teach key vocabulary, so you can introduce important words or phrases before the students watch the clips. You can incorporate active tasks, use comprehension questions, prediction activities, or engage the students in post-viewing discussions. It's also an interesting thing to vary the genre of the video clips that you use. So don't just use the same things. Use films, advertisements, vlogs, documentaries, animations, the news, etc., to suit different learning goals. And there's so many rich video clips readily available these days out on YouTube, for example, that is really interesting and very easy to find things that you would like to, that make sense in using. Right, so now turning again to my conversation with Martin, I'd like to speak about other types of video that you can create to use with students or to help students with language learning. As we talked about, creating video content with students can be an incredibly effective and engaging way to develop language skills. It encourages creativity, collaboration, and real-world language use. So here's a breakdown of the type of videos students can create and the benefits they offer. Now, some of them Martin and I already talked about, but some of the other ones I think are new. So the first type of video that you can ask students to create are role plays and skits. So for example, students can act out dialogues. I talked a little bit about that based on film clips, for example, but you can actually get them to write and then act out dialogues that are related to a particular topic in a course book that you're using, for example. They could be everyday situations or scripted scenes. You can get them to think of a dilemma or particular scene that is typical and get them to script it and then act it out. The more that they act it out, the more that they rehearse it, the better they will get at the language that is involved in the scenes, for example. You can look at particular aspects of language. So you can focus on functional language, for example, as asking for directions, ordering a restaurant, etc. Or you can focus on fluency and pronunciation skills. It's totally up to you and depends on the learning outcomes that you want from the students. The benefits of doing this, it encourages teamwork, it can build confidence in speaking and promotes creative expression. And if you are videoing the thing that the students are acting out, then you can definitely persuade them to rehearse it again and again to get it right. You can give them help with their pronunciation, for example. And this is like a real reason for speaking that the students will have. So it can be a very interesting thing to do. Then there are interviews and podcasts. Students can interview each other. They can interview teachers at the school or community members on various topics. You can put together a little news magazine program, a documentary, for example, project. And this language focus can be placed on question formation, on active listening, conversational skills. So the benefits of doing this is that it helps the students develop communication skills and provides real-world speaking practice. Blogs or video blogs are another interesting thing to get students involved in. And this may be something that they've seen and is part of their life already. They may be watching Instagram, for example, where lots of people on Instagram are using this type of format of video, so short videos about particular subjects, etc. You can have students create personal video diaries about their hobbies, their daily routines or reflections. You can have them focus on descriptive language, on storytelling, or just have them speak about whatever they're interested in to promote fluency. The benefits of doing this is that it boosts confidence in speaking and encourages the students towards self-expression. Then there are explainer videos. Now, this is an interesting genre of video that is particularly interesting and popular on the video sites such as YouTube. And these are, for example, how-to videos on all sorts of topics. You can get them to focus on something that they're interested in, a hobby, for example. You can have them cook something that is traditional or typical in their house. You can have them take you through a sport or digital skills or anything really, a computer gaming, anything that they're interested in, they can talk about and have them show. And this can be an interesting way of students being able to share something about their lives with other students or with other classes. This is particularly interesting if you have an international project, for example, and you have the students produce little videos about their lifestyle, their hobbies, etc., and then share it with the class in the other country. And this can be an interesting window into a world of a different culture. The language focus here is in instructional language. If you are getting the students to actually show and tell what they actually have to, what you have to do to be able to make a particular dish, for example, from their culture. Sequencing phrases are interesting, and sometimes modal verbs. And the benefits of doing this is that it helps the students with building clarity in communication, and can improve their planning skills, because it's always a good idea for them to actually plan particularly and maybe script what they're going to be producing the video on. It doesn't have to be very long. You can actually put a time limit on it, for example, a minute or a minute and a half. That's the best thing, rather than get them to producing very long videos. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. Then there are news reports. For example, students can report on school events, local news, or even global issues. And the language focus here would be on formal language, on reported speech, and you can get them to use their summarizing skills. So the benefits of doing this is that it helps students develop presentation skills and encourages students to engage with current affairs. Next, a book or film or TV reviews or game reviews. Students summarize and critique the books, films, games, or TV series that they're interested in. The language focus here is upon language of opinion, persuasive language, and vocabulary development. And the benefits of doing this is that it encourages the students to engage in critical thinking or reflection. And it also motivates students because they're usually going to be talking about something that they're interested in, something they like, or something they particularly don't like and want to get it off their chest, why they think a particular TV series, for example, a film, isn't very good. Next is digital storytelling. Students can create animated or narrated stories using video tools. This is probably best if they're using these tools to encourage them to do this from home, or maybe they have access to the machines, computers, for example, to be able to do this outside of class time in the school. It helps them focus on narrative tenses, descriptive language, and dialogue. And this really encourages them to boost their creativity and provides opportunities for the students to personalize their language use. Another genre that is particularly interesting for use within students of language are documentaries. So students can research a topic, for example, environmental issues, local history, something about the school that is interesting, for example, anything really that they are interested in and that would motivate them to speak. And they produce a documentary from it. The language focus here is on formal language, research skills, and presenting arguments. And the benefits can be encouraging independent research and critical thinking. Another fun thing to encourage students to do is to get them to produce advertisements and commercials. They can promote a fictional product or a service. This is particularly interesting. It can be part of a project where they have to, for example, invent something new that will solve a particular problem that the world has. And then after they've designed the product, and it can be completely fantastic or impossible to produce, but something that is a bit of fun and can also be something that involves the students in problem solving, for example. And then they produce an advert about it. The language focus here as well is producing persuasive language, rhetorical devices, and creative thinking. And this can build awareness of social issues, awareness of marketing, and encourage innovation. If you do that, it's often very interesting to have a look at some of the typical advertisements the length of them, the kind of messages, how much is visual, how much is spoken, and that can raise awareness of that type of language use. And then there are music videos. Students can rewrite the lyrics of a popular song or create their own. You can get them to mime and produce a video, or you can actually get them to as I said, rewrite lyrics, or maybe they can actually create something up as well. It doesn't have to be a song. It could be a poem, for example, and then they act it out. And this gets them to focus on the rhyme, rhythm, and expressive language of these genres. Combining music with language learning in a fun, memorable way can often be very motivating for the students. So we talked a little bit about this, Martin and I, in our conversation, but what are the benefits of creating video with students? Well, the first one, I think, a very important thing, is that increases motivation and engagement. So video creation feels very purposeful and exciting for learners, or can do. And this creative aspect of using language can make the learning of the language and the practice of the language a lot more enjoyable than if you're just following a course book, for example. It also encourages authentic language use. Students have to naturally use language for meaningful communication when they're planning, scripting, and recording their videos. It can build collaborative skills. So group video projects require teamwork, and they improve the students' ability to negotiate, to delegate, and cooperate. A very good thing for students to be involved in. It also develops digital literacy, so students can gain valuable experience with video editing tools sometimes. Again, it's probably not something you want to do in the classroom. If they have access to it, that all good. And they can also use presentation software, which is often the best way if you want to introduce video images into the videos. This is probably the easiest way of doing it. And it can also encourage them to use different media creation platforms, which is something they may well be interested in anyway. I would be wary about getting too involved in that, because it definitely can take away from the actual language practice, which is something you don't want to do as a language teacher. But you can also perhaps get them involved with other subjects, maybe with other teachers where they are interested in doing that. So if at the school they're learning about IT, then this is something that maybe the IT teacher can introduce them to and get them maybe interested in them learning more about it. And this gives them another reason for using it, really. Enhancing pronunciation and fluency can be a particular benefit. So repeated practice while recording helps the students improve clarity, intonation, and confidence in speaking. That's always a good reason for being involved in this type of project. Strengthening writing and planning skills is something that isn't perhaps obvious, but it is typical for students to be involved in, because they have to create a storyboard, they have to write a script, or they have to organize content, for example, and this can reinforce writing conventions and cohesive language use. And the use of video can provide opportunities for a reflection. So reviewing their own videos can encourage self-assessment and improvement. It's very unusual that students actually understand or see or get to hear how they are when they're speaking a foreign language. If they're caught on video and then they're watching themselves do it, and there's a good reason for it, not just let's see how you're speaking, then this can encourage that self-assessment and get them to reflect upon how they're speaking and maybe improve. And then finally, of course, it can boost confidence. So seeing the completed videos can be a powerful confidence boost for language learners. So that brings us to the end of today's Sunday Lunch Show. Many thanks to today's guest, Martin Sketchley, and all of you who joined us live today. Thanks too to all of you who are listening back to this recording. That's it from me. There are Teachers Talk radio shows all week on all manner of interesting topics. So please listen in live or back to the recordings. And I hope you will join me again next week at the same time. Bye for now.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.